Real quick, before we jump into the show, we created the Collecting Keys podcast to be a real estate investing podcast that is created by real estate operators for real estate operators. And we want operators everywhere to know what it really takes these days to be successful in this business, rather than all the fluff that all the other content creators and podcasters out there make. And so one of the challenges with this is that it's challenging to grow because most operators are too busy out there working, right? And they aren't always learning or actively seeking new learning material. And so if you could please share this show with any fellow operators you can text it to them, you can post it on your socials, you can leave us a good review that you then share somewhere. That would be amazing. But really, whatever, it really helps us continue to get excited to create content. And it will also help you because everyone that you expose us to will get better as a real estate operator and close more deals. So if you could do that for us, it would really mean a ton. And otherwise, we appreciate you guys. And let's get into this episode.
If you just want to start wholesaling right now, unless you're willing to spend several hours on the phone, like pounding a dialers, the opportunities are a lot harder to come by.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. I am your host, Mike DeHaan, here with my co-hosts, Dan Austin and Dylan Cook.
Cool.
And this is the show by real estate operators for real estate operators, so you can continue to grow and expand your business in the ever-changing economy. Should specify real estate business, but I don't know. We do a lot of general business talk. And it's all, the one thing I've come to realize is business isn't that different. Especially like small business, depending on what you're doing. It's all the same shit. It's all marketing. It's all sales. It's all like peacocking online and then realizing that you suck at it. So you start to sell an online course instead. You know, that's really what it all comes down to.
And you got to be a little psychotic in the head to try it.
We talked about that at the last KeysCon, actually. We said, I asked everyone, like, who would make more money consistently if you went back to your old W-2 versus doing this? And every single person raised their hand pretty much. And I'm like, so that's how you know that you're an entrepreneur, because you're still here.
Yeah.
Right.
But wait until they make more than they would at the W-2, because
exactly
then you're unemployable.
Totally.
Right.
Well, that's a lot. That's a fair point. And I would say that was like consistent, because there's always the ups and downs. And so amongst the months where you make nothing, you know, on either side of that, you'll make like 80 grand, 100 grand. And then the 0 months don't feel good, but you know that you just made like your old salary in a month before. And so that kind of helps.
That's the big money. That's what people are chasing. That's the dragon we're all chasing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But man, you tell you what though, even after years and years, the bad months still are not fun, because they do happen. But it's kind of part of the game.
You know what? Dealing with people is not fun. And this is kind of a sidebar. I was thinking about this, and Mike, you'll understand this. I don't know why this popped in my head, but there's a lot of dirtbags just out there in general.
Like in the world, like just period.
In the world in general. And like when you're at like a job or whatever, like it's somewhat masked because people just kind of do whatever they do, whether they're dirtbags or not. It's like, it's different. But when you're dealing with people and partnerships and joint ventures and stuff like that, people, you run into them, and it really is detrimental. And it just got me thinking, remember that partner we had where we flipped the house? It was actually an novation deal. And I wasn't licensed in Idaho as a broker, so I couldn't list it. Typically I'd list it, but he was listed, or he was an agent in Idaho. And, you know, we're the 1/3 each partners on this deal.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a full commission on the deal. And then wanted 1/3 of the deal. Mind you, him and I agreed, like, hey, I'll run all of the listing stuff. I'm lockboxing and I'm doing it all. I will talk to all this stuff. Like, I did 100% of everything. I just legally couldn't put it on the MLS. And he shoved a full commission. We didn't see it until the back end, right? We're like, why would you do that? Like, that is some shady bullshit, right? Like, that would be, all someone has to do is look at it. Like, why would you do that? Like, that's so stupid. Like, that is bullshit.
And he lived in California. It was a virtual thing. He just happened to be licensed in Idaho.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like that's kind of stuff. You deal with that too. You got to be conscious about that. And sometimes you run into partnerships, JVs, or just other people like Dylan, you talked about like last week or whatever, the dude that tried to go around you. And you just deal with this sort of stuff all the time where people just straight up lie.
Yeah. I walked a property today from another wholesaler. I was like, I don't have any flips going on. This looks promising on paper. I know the area. And then so he looked at all the pictures, and then I walk it and I go in the basement, and there's a 50-foot horizontal crack across the foundation that's like bowing.
Hell yeah.
That wasn't disclosed, wasn't in the thing. I'm like, this changes everything. Well, like, you know, it's an expensive fix. And did you really think no one's just going to see this? Like
He hoped.
yeah, like I don't know, man. So I'm just like, it's just, you wasted 2 hours of my time today.
Yeah.
So
That's exactly it. Is he hopes no one's going to see it, right? That's always like the super risky thing when you're working with wholesalers.
It's shady bullshit.
yeah, I guess if he sells it to someone out of state that just like takes his word for it, he could.
Which happens, right? To a
Yeah.
lot of people, you know, and like there are wholesalers who do stuff like that intentionally as well. Like sometimes it's ignorance, like they don't know it's that big of a deal. Other times it's shady. I was actually talking to the owner of the hard money company that I worked at for a short time here in Spokane. And he said that there are certain wholesalers here in Spokane that as a new company policy, this hard money lending company will not do loans for people who are buying their deals because there have been enough, and this is his own words, his buyers faced enough surprises on the deals that they were buying that they were actually resulting in their buyers losing money on these deals.
Wow.
Right. And so everything from stuff like foundation issues to not disclosing like water issues to zoning stuff. That's a huge one that people really get bit with out here in Spokane because they're like, here's a house on land. I can subdivide it. It's like, you actually can't because the city and the county makes everything really fucking challenging. But new people that don't understand that are trying to get into like this land craze right now. They will just eat up these houses, and wholesalers will be like, you could absolutely put 5 more houses on this 5 acres, but no, you literally can't do it. Like you're not allowed to.
Yeah, just straight lying to people.
All this is why the wholesaling honestly gets a bad rap. It's because there's a low barrier to entry and there's scumbags that come in. But I know we've said it on the show, like wholesaling, you almost need to know every aspect of the real estate business. So it should be like, in theory, wholesaling should be one of the last things you do until you have experience. Now, you know, or at least you have a coach or someone that can help you through it on the first couple ones. Like everyone's got to start somewhere, but you got to know rehab, you got to know sales, you got to know how to run comps, like all this stuff.
It's actually an interesting point there, Dylan. So what do you think, like in hindsight, looking back, if you are somebody that I would say has a little bit of money, like you have like a basic W-2, let's say, you know, you went to school, you make like $100,000 a year, you want to like get into real estate or do something bigger. What do you think is the way, like, what do you think they should do first?
Is the goal to kind of replace your W-2 or just flip a couple houses a couple of years?
Their goal is, the message of our show is to make massive income before passive income, but then have the ability to turn it into a business.
Attend meetups, find someone you jive with, and just really see if they will like vibe.
That's real broad. Let's talk about more stuff like in terms of like transactions. Do you think they should start buying rental properties? Think they should like flip houses? Should they try to do bigger stuff? Like Brandon Turner always says, I wish I'd gone bigger sooner because that's how I'm rich now.
Okay, side tangent. He actually had in his recent podcast, he countered that. He's almost the opposite.
Did he retract on that?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
It's about fucking time.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't start with rentals. I mean, if you're making $100 to $200 a door, like, okay, maybe buy one so that way you can kind of learn the ropes a little bit, but I'm probably flipping or maybe wholesaling. But again, you're going to need the guidance of somebody else. And as an example, when I was a pharmacist and I was learning how to do this, I mean, I took the extreme. I took a week of vacation, paid vacation. And I followed a contractor around for like a week, right? To kind of learn the ropes and stuff. So I don't know if other people are willing to do that, you know, and have that kind of stuff, but I'd probably flip or wholesale. But again, find someone in your market that's doing it.
Yeah. I would have used to answer that question with wholesale first, but now I'd probably say flip.
Yeah.
Because the barrier to entry to wholesaling is a little bit high right now. Like if you're not willing to if you're trying to look for the quickest bump, right? Go and connect with all the wholesalers, spend time buying them coffee, learn how to buy a good deal, learn what that good deal looks like, then go out, flip a house, maybe make 30, 40 grand. Now you have your seed capital.
Yeah.
For your wholesale business.
Yeah.
And you'll actually learn rehab, like accurate rehab costs.
Yeah, which you need to know for wholesaling.
Totally. Yeah. And I think I would agree with that now too in hindsight. I think that was one of the reasons when we started wholesaling, we were able to get going pretty well and find good deals was both Dan and I had already been in like the rehab world. Dan had done massive rehabs and through rentals that he owned. I had already been flipping properties, and it's way less scalable to flip houses, way slower process, but you get your education in comping and analyzing deals and learning to estimate rehabs or even just talking to contractors if they're going to be giving you bids on stuff. And also too, I would say it puts you in the shoes of who's ultimately going to be your buyer if you do want to get into wholesaling, and you will kind of know the stuff that they want to see, right? You will know the big challenges that you face on your flips that you're going to be able to face. And then at that point, if you're educated and you're still fucking people over, you're just a dirtbag. And that's no problem.
You're just a loser.
Right. Yeah.
And to your point, I think flipping would almost be easier because you can buy from a wholesaler. Whereas if you just want to start wholesaling right now, unless you're willing to spend several hours on the phone, like pounding a dialer or something, like the opportunities are a lot harder to come by, as Dan alluded to. So almost rely on someone else for the deal sourcing up front.
I know. It's crazy how much harder that sort of stuff is now. When did you start buying real estate, Dylan?
I bought my first like a house hack in June of 2018.
2018. So we started about similar time because I bought my first rental then, and then I bought my first flip shortly after that. But back then I was buying REOs, which I don't even know if that's a thing anymore.
Those don't even exist right now, dude.
That's really not a thing anymore. Because anything that goes to auction gets bought by an investor. It doesn't stay at the bank.
Yeah, for sure. But I remember there was so many REOs. I was working with an agent that specifically did REOs. We would just go and like walk houses. Like on like a Saturday, we'd walk like 10 houses. It was crazy. And then I ended up buying like one of the worst fucking ones because I'm an idiot. But
you were an idiot.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, right.
You've learned.
Back then. Yeah.
And the biggest thing is limiting bed down. Like I've lost money on deals, and like I know you guys have too, but it's just don't put yourself in a position where it's going to ruin you. Now you need 3 more years of your W-2 to get back to even.
Yeah. Yeah, don't let somebody talking to you to do a deal that's shitty, right? That's the risk of going to a wholesaler and like them lying to you about the Boeing Foundation not being an issue. Like, oh yeah, that's fine. Or you being able to subdivide a lot that you can't subdivide. Like you still have to do your research, right? You still have to learn, educate yourself.
And the other thing is like word travels fast. So if you get the reputation of someone that sends out shitty deals, it's almost like it's very hard to overcome that.
And if you get the reputation for buying shitty deals, people will bring you even more.
Yeah.
You'll have unlimited shitty deals.
Everyone knows that buyer.
Yeah.
And that buyer will buy anything. I have no idea how they make money, but that's not my business.
It's not my problem.
That was hedge funds a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Inevitably, a year later, they aren't buyers anymore.
No way, dude. Yeah. I mean, like our main buyers that were like that were also our competition here in town. We sold them so many deals that we'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. And some of them, they would make hand over fist money on like stuff that we didn't see or the market, everything else. And then sure enough, as soon as the market turned, they lost their ass and they completely folded.
Go shop.
I don't know. I think it's 3 separate businesses. Wholesaling is a separate business. Flipping is a separate business. Owning rentals is a separate business. As you guys know, with your ongoing issues of your portfolio.
What a transition. It's the worst fucking business. I'm so over owning rentals. But yeah, Dan and I had some lovely heavy rains here, and our flood house that we've talked about on the show 4 times, 5 times, flooded again.
More, maybe.
And Dan has this awesome video of him walking ankle deep in water.
This one I'll say is the worst that we've ever had.
Oh yeah. I'll post a video on my Instagram at Mike_invest, and you can see Dan's sexy feet walking through this ankle deep water and this.
I already took some screenshots.
Yeah. They're worth some money, dude. Those toes, they're good toes.
Yeah, straight out of Lord of the Rings, dude. You got hobbit feet.
Oh yeah, dude. They serve me well.
Like, and this one, it's always something else. And it's like, we don't know the cause because it was also freezing cold. So it's like, did something burst? Did it come up through the shower? Because there was so much water coming through the city. We're pretty damn positive it's not from the ground. Because we already dealt with that and we fixed everything. We have our French drain. We have a new foundation. We have all this shit. I don't know, man. It's just always something.
I think a homeless guy went in there and started a fire. I don't know. I think that's what caused it.
What happened. Yeah, it is. It is in squatter territory up there by Manitou Park, most dangerous part of Spokane.
Right.
So let me ask you, like what'd you guys buy it for? What do you think it's worth today? And like, how much do you think these repairs have cost you? Like, are you still net positive on this thing, even like with the equity build?
So we bought it for $289,000. The reason we bought this house is because we're just talking about the lot subdivision. It has this back lot that is subdividable. We went and did all that. So when we bought it, we actually paid close to retail value for the house.
Although, as is retail, because it was a piece of shit. We spent a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
We could have flipped it back then and made $50,000 because that's what our final appraisal was. We could have maybe made more, but it would have been like a $50,000 flip, which would have been a decent little flip.
Yeah. But we kept it so we could subdivide the lot, which was $150,000 on its own. So right now, all in the house with the lot's worth about $600,000. The only reason we haven't sold the lot yet is because the lender is trying to make us do a partial reconveyance. They won't let us do like a partial pay down, but they're basically forcing us to refinance. And we have like a 3% rate. So they're like, if you want to sell the lot, then you're going to have to jump to 8% and pay our prepayment penalty. It's a DSCR lender and all this other bullshit.
That was in 2022, right? It was a 5% repayment. So it would have been like 20 grand or something like that. And we were like, well, let's just wait because we had just started Airbnb and things were fine. Like it was like, cash flow, we're not in a hurry. We already had it sold once for $160,000 or $170,000 or whatever it ended up being. So it was like, let's just ride this out. And then we've been talking about selling it for a long time though. The problem is we got like that, not a problem, but the reason that extended is we had like a tenant move in for 6 months. Like then we started doing medium term. And it was like, it's fine. We're making a little bit of money every month. And then we had our oil furnace that we didn't replace leak. And that was the initiating thing. And that took we got into like an argument and lawsuit and all this stuff with the mitigation company. Mm-hmm. And so that was like a 6 to 8 month thing. And I know the insurance company fucked up because at the end of it, we didn't have rental loss coverage for some reason. And they gave us all of our money from lost rent. So then that kind of like got us back up to par. We just kind of kept having these things happen to where it was like, oh, well, we got a person in there. The reason why it wasn't listed is because we had an Airbnb booking for like 6 or 8 weeks. And my property manager was like, hey, do you want me to block this out since you're going to sell? And I was like, nah, who cares if somebody books it for the weekend? It's winter. It's like, what's the chances? Of course, right when we do that, we're about to list it. It's 6 weeks. So we're just like, oh, let's wait. And then that same guest was like, by the way, the whole basement's flooded. And my property manager is like, how did they not hear this? How did they not hear 6 inches of water coming into the house? The whole basement, like the house is floating.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I will say, Dan, even though it sucks that we still own it with that, I'm glad that this happened while we still own it and not like when we were halfway through escrow and selling the property. Oh my God, that would suck.
Yeah, it's the best of the worst case. And so we just have to work through it. And yeah, I would say the deal is not as pretty today as it was 3 years ago.
What I'm hearing though is you still bought it at a great price. Like
we did.
So your downside protection there is the price that you buy.
Yeah. That is the one principle we've always made sure to stand by is we don't buy stuff that like if a minor thing happens that we're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in the deals that we have lost on, it's been like insane stuff that's happened. Like we've had one really bad loss in our career where we lost over $100,000, but like literally everything that could have gone bad with that deal happened, right? Mm-hmm. From the market completely turning over and our exit price being like 20% less than we were expecting when we bought it, to us having to evict the previous homeowners from their own home when they decided to not move out, even though they had already bought another house and they just rented that and decided to be dirtbags, to a much larger rehab than we were expecting, partially because they fucked up the house. Like there was a bunch of stuff that happened in that one. And it made hard money costs for 15, 16 months, whatever it was.
The crazy thing about Mike and I's journey is in about 18 months, we made several millions of dollars. Like if you actually look at it from when we started wholesaling, we ramped up. It was like a 6-8 month ramp up. And then like the next year and a half is when we made like literally, if you include equity and all the money, we brought in like several $1 million. And then now it's just been defending that.
Totally. Honestly.
The last 2.5 years has just been defending it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it definitely changed, right? And you guys kind of started, I know, as we talked about, as other people were turning. But what you guys were kind of alluding to there, a couple of things. Having two parcels on one loan has also caused me troubles, like trying to dispo deals. Mm-hmm. So that, that's another thing to consider when you're looking at these.
Yep.
Because the ones that we're closing tomorrow, I wanted nothing to do with the other, but they have to come as a package unless you make the seller refinance out of them, which he's not going to do.
Yeah, right. But yeah, and a big part of this challenge right now too is just the way that insurance is handling everything. We were kind of talking about this before the show. Insurance is such a racket everywhere. But like here now with this water situation, they now have all these rules around like what they will insure you for when it comes to water. Like if it came directly from the ground, they won't do that. It basically has to be from like a burst pipe or like something else that's like wide ranging. And it's like, and even then, if it is from a burst pipe, it's only up to like a small amount of money. It's like $5,000 or $10,000.
That's if it comes through the sewer, right?
If it comes through the sewer.
A drain backup. You only get $5,000 in repair. If it's a burst pipe, they'll cover it all. And then if it's groundwater, they won't cover it. And there's nothing you can do. It's like, it's a racket. I mean, the amount of money you spend on insurance, and then when you actually file a claim, it's always like, well, you sure you want to do this? Like our insurance agent's always like, well, we should talk about this before you file. It's like, why?
Because your premiums are going to go up, even though it's not your freaking fault.
I know,
exactly. And so it's just kind of wild. You pay for it regardless. Because I mean, think about how many times a person files an insurance claim in their life. Like very rare. Like
I
a
know.
homeowner's claim, like I've done one, you know what I mean? And that was on the same property. And so it's like crazy.
Yeah. When I was buying, actually, I bought my 12 unit package. The property had an insurance claim before I bought it. And that hurt me as the buyer,
Yeah.
which I was like, doesn't make any sense. I was like, so they travel with the life of the property almost.
I will say this, insurance companies and like life insurance companies, they know exactly what they're doing and they wouldn't be in the business if they didn't make more money on you given the risks.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
They know when you're going to die. So when you get life insurance, they are making more money off of you and the average, customer of their than they're going to pay out. And the same thing goes for like hazard insurance on your home and homeowner insurance and all that stuff.
It's all actuarial math based.
Exactly.
Yeah. At least with things like life insurance, though, right, is it's going off of odds of your life ending. And it is one of those things that if you do die, the amount of money that you get actually is like significant, right? With I have a term life insurance policy that I pay $700 a year for. And it'll be good until whenever I can't use term anymore. It's like age 60. And if I die in that period of time, it's like $3 million that'll go to my wife, right? That's very significant for what I'm putting into it. The problem with like home insurance and property insurance is you're paying like $2,000 a year for nothing, apparently. And then as soon as you have an issue like a sewer backup, like, oh, we'll only give you $5,000.
Yeah. Oh, and they won't fix what caused it. They won't fix what caused it, by the way.
Yeah, they'll just fix like the renovation. Yeah, it's a freaking joke.
And if your roof gets blown off your house and say it was a 30-year roof and you're on year 25, they're going to give you 5 years worth of a roof.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, that shit is what pisses me off, man. Yeah. They have so many exceptions, or if they like honestly, like even if you had like a fire and you're like, oh, this was caused because you smoked in the house or whatever, like if they'll try to find something to put the blame not on them so they don't have to pay out the claim.
I don't know like fundamentals of that industry, but I imagine it has to be getting close to like collapsing with something going on.
I think Florida is killing us here. We need to cut Florida off the U.S. and just let them have their own self-insurance down there.
Yeah, California too. Even though I think California state pays for most of their insurance.
Yeah.
Well, they definitely have to, right? Because people won't insure. Yeah, we should get rid of kind of the extremes.
Well, I mean, Warren Buffett, right? His main thing is he bought a take of Geico forever ago. And all he does is invest the float of Geico. So all that money that sits around there is like how he deploys his money.
Oh, really?
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it's all like the float based money that he's investing. And that was his best rate of his investing life was investing in Geico early.
What do you mean by the float? I read the Berkshire Hathaway notes around how much you put into Geico. What does that float mean?
What I mean by float is like, let's say you're bringing in $100 million just from people paying in premiums every year, but your business expenses are only 50 million. The float is the difference. It's basically like your profit of what insurance companies, their float is their profit. And they decide where to invest that money.
So they give that to him to invest, or he invests that in Geico?
He is a direct owner of Geico, so he can kind of do whatever he wants with it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because does he own 100% of it now?
I don't know if it's 100, but
okay,
it's to the point where he has like controlling stake.
Yeah, he can do what he wants.
Hey, so you've heard us mention our Scale community before, and I don't have a lot of time, so here are the quick highlights. In Scale, you get all of our processes and systems that we use to do about 150 deals every single year. You also get a community of investors that are verified crushing it in their markets. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be members. And that way you don't have to waste time with non-starters like you find in other groups. You also get preferred relationships with marketing companies and even lenders that will give you 100% financing. If you just heard all that and said, nah, I don't really need it, that's not going to help me, I don't know what to tell you. You're lying to yourself, because all of those things are guaranteed to help you explode your business and buy more deals next year. So go to collectingkeys.com/scale and let's see if you qualify. Traditionally, a lot of insurance companies, I don't know if it was just life insurance, I would assume like all insurance companies do this, a lot of their reserve capital was put in things like commercial real estate, because that was always regarded as like the safest of investments. But now that's been tanking. There has to be a correlation between that and all the chicanery with insurance right now, right? The fact that their like reserve assets are all collapsing.
Actually, that's a good point, Mike. I've not thought about that.
Yeah.
What their projected returns are lower than what they had, they're doing. Then like we have to make up this money somewhere.
Yeah.
And not only if their projected returns lower, I'm sure there's a lot of them that are losing horribly.
Yeah.
Well, especially in those smaller companies that are in those disaster areas. It's like even where we're at now, like Mike, like if everybody experienced the same issue and one insurance company is like really prominent here, they're going to have to deal with all this shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and we do have that. Like we've had windstorms, we've had rainstorms, we have hailstorms where an entire area of a town gets plastered, dude, and they pay out.
A lot of this too was a byproduct of like the ZIRP, right? The zero interest rate policy, because a lot of these pension funds, insurance companies, endowments, they would buy government bonds, but when they're yielding 2%, we're like, okay, well now we can't meet our requirements of what we need to pay out to the teachers unions, whatever it is. So they go out further on the risk curve, private equity, commercial real estate, this kind of stuff. So this is like where that term moral hazard comes from in the investing community, because they're reaching for returns, right?
Yeah.
It's a scary thing when it starts going the other way.
Yeah.
It sucks.
There's been a lot of stuff like that recently. I know if you guys haven't seen this by the time this podcast comes out, there's been a lot of talk going around the real estate world around the FHA bubble. And the fact that this is finally coming to fruition, I'm surprised it's lasted this long. And so you guys go and you look up like the FHA real estate bubble. Anyone that was in the business in like 2020 and 2021 saw this bullshit where you had agents and you had loan brokers who made a percentage of the purchase price of the property, a percentage of the loan size as their commission. And so what they would do is they would get with an FHA borrower and they would go and they would find a house and they would say, how much are you approved for? 230,000. Cool. Well, this house, it's only on the market for 200. We're going to offer 230,000 because that's going to be the most competitive offer. Right. And they would just do it to maximize how much the agent and the loan broker were making. And with the FHA loans, you only have to put 3.5% down. So you'd have them grossly overpaying for the property, bringing in a very little bit amount of money. And the problem is in order to qualify for that, the different like income requirements and everything were much, much smaller than a traditional loan. And so you had these people that were majorly over leveraged. And there's one instance in particular, we had this flip and the house was like a dump and it was still occupied. And we put it on the market purely because we were trying to get the tenants out. And we could have kind of like a dream price. We weren't expecting to sell it for that. We get an offer for it almost right away. If it was like $30,000, $40,000 over asking price.
It was more than that. It was like, it would probably be 50, 60 over asking. It was nuts. It was like stupid. And we were already listed it for a stupid price.
It was disgusting.
Like full retail and it hadn't been fixed up.
It hadn't been fixed up and there was like no other offer. They just offered us this. And the only condition was the property had to be vacant. So it was a 90-day closing. We got the tenants out. They closed on it and this house was a disaster. The only thing we had to do was go and like scrape the paint off of like the roof.
Oh my God. I just had one of those.
The chipped paint. Yeah, the chip paint.
The chip paint, because that's the issue. And then it's closing day and we get a call and the closer's like, hey, so in order to meet the debt to income requirements, the buyer needs you to pay off. It was like a $47 credit card bill. They didn't have enough money to pay it. So we needed to credit them $47 to sell them this house, which we made like 90 grand on.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the dumbest thing. They should not be buying this shithole house if they don't have $50.
They're such a gross.
No,
house,
100%. I mean, then
like it's insane.
Skip that for the fucking intro. Because that was
right.
Yeah.
The FHA buyers, they notoriously buy the shittiest houses because that's all they can afford. And that's not their fault. It's just what it is. I mean, that same time frame, I was listing and selling houses that I was like, don't buy this. Like you're a young couple with a baby and that hot water tank is about to fucking go. And that's $1,500. And that's like.
And at a buyer's agent, Dan, that's what you're supposed to do. But that's what 90% of them don't
Totally.
do.
No, because they're going to come in and say offer 20 grand over asking because that's how we'll be competitive or 50 or 60, which is all the FHA and VA offers we were getting at that time were all, yeah, because they're the risky buyers, right? They might drop out. And so that's why people were doing that. But like, it was crazy, man, to be honest.
Well, I mean, to put context around this, I know we talked about this in the Slack channel a little bit. There was a report that came out basically like straight from the FHA, like from the source. And for conventional, I think the DTI is like 30 to 35%. For FHA, it's 43%, right? So you can see from the start that they're already a little thinner. But this says in 2007, 35% of new FHA borrowers had a debt to income ratios above the 43% threshold. In 2020, 54% did. And then now, as of like 2024, about 64% of FHA borrowers last year exceeded the 43% threshold.
So 64%.
So 6 out of 10, more than 6 out of 10 borrowers are above this threshold and they're still getting approved. 50% of their income is going towards a housing payment.
or more. Is that the idea? Anything above this counts anything up, say 44% above.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but in the same article, Dylan, it's a Wall Street Journal article. You talk about, well, I guess not you. They talk about how the FHA was giving programs to note servicing companies to keep defaulting FHA borrowers current by basically taking the unpaid payments and just adding them onto the end so that they would eventually have to pay it.
But the servicers would get like a portion of that?
Yeah, they were getting kickbacks.
That's crazy. See, that's like one of those hidden inflationary things too. You're like, what the fuck was that for?
Absolutely, dude.
You know what I mean? And maybe it was to keep people out of default. And I see there's like some reasoning, but man, that's stupid.
The FHA made 556,841 quote unquote incentive payments to servicers over the past year to prevent foreclosures, nearly as many as the new mortgages it issued.
Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
And here's the thing, though. I don't know how it's been in Cincinnati, but I can tell you here in Washington, where we're at in Spokane County, like we still haven't seen a foreclosure or auction, like a foreclosure auction, like at the county court steps since COVID. Like you can't. I mean, there has been one, but like you can't like buy it. Like it just doesn't. They don't exist. There's not enough to exist.
Or there will be like one or two like houses, like maybe a quarter, but otherwise you're completely right, Dan. Because what happens is they will be listed to go to auction, and then all of a sudden they're all just canceled, but they're all forgiven like the day of the auction.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going on for years, for like 5 years now.
If you look at like the number of foreclosures, like pre-2008, not even like during the bubble of 2008, but just pre-2008, the median level was probably 50% higher than it is today.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that crazy? Yeah, I wouldn't say it's because the borrowers are in any stronger position.
Yeah.
No. And the last thing I want to say from this article, of the 52,000 FHA loans last year that went seriously delinquent within the first year, meaning I think that's 3 months of missed payments, only 9 resulted in a foreclosure.
Like 9 what?
9.
Just 9.
Just 9.
That's in the whole country? That's the whole country? Oh my God. You know someone's fucking with those numbers.
Right.
You know, like how did only 9, that's such a low percentage. You know that they're definitely doing something on the back end here. I want to get paid too. How are we getting paid?
It's wonky. And like there's no way that gets resolved without the creditors losing money.
Someone has to lose.
Right? Like someone has to lose. And the FHA people, they're not going to lose. They don't have any fucking money.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have any equity because they bought these houses and the things already depreciated.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not the servicer either. The servicer doesn't keep them on the books. They're not portfolio lenders. They pack a much and send them off to the government. So the government's going to take the loss.
Who's getting the mortgage-backed security, right? And oh geez.
Yeah, man. How long until Doge comes knocking for that money, dude? And just like, hey,
where's our money?
Yeah, we're going to start selling all your houses for you. You better get out.
Hell yeah, dude. They're going to start having some Tesla houses.
That's why Elon's getting the robots going. They're going to have like foreclosure robots. They're going to come and like rough people up.
They're going to have the robots live in the houses, dude. They're going to kick people out and move them in.
Yeah, right.
Charging stations for robots.
Yeah. No, we need somewhere for all the Russian immigrants to come stay because that's who we accept now.
I don't know how that gets resolved though, guys, to be honest with you.
It's nuts, dude.
It doesn't without something catastrophic.
Yeah. Yeah. The government's going to have to do something, step in and make some changes. The taxpayer ultimately is going to be the one that foots the bill on any money that has to get put in there.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think. Okay, even if you offer relief or something, yeah, I mean, Dan, I guess it would ultimately trickle down,
print money
via inflation. But I don't know. It's kind of a rock and a hard place.
Maybe I want to know how much actual money this entails. Like, what is the like dollar amount? Because 52,000. FHA loans last year went seriously delinquent, right? Even if like, let's say it's an average home price of $200,000. How much money is that?
It says 1.04 E10 on my calculator.
Oh,
I got to turn it sideways.
No, I mean, I would more do this. I would take the 557,000 number because that was the incentive payments. And it says nearly as many as the new mortgages issued. So 500,000 new issued times 200,000. I mean, that's a lot of zeros.
That's billions. That's billions.
Yeah, 500,000 times 200,000. Yeah, that's going to be hundreds of billions. Yeah, that's like, is that $1 trillion? Pretty close.
Then 12 zeros.
12 zeros. So it's like hundreds of billions. Yeah.
It's a lot of money, which is chump change, really. I mean, here goes back to the conversation about the 0% treasury bond. Is that a good way to raise money for something like this, because this is exactly what you're doing it for, is for, instead of printing money, you're essentially raising it through this 0% debt.
My gut answer, I think I'd have to sit with it for a while, but would be yes. I mean, because if you can get someone else to pay for your debt, it's the whole premise of why we have rental properties in the first place. Someone else is paying down your debt.
Yeah. If you can get 0% debt, right, to go and basically pay off all these shitty mortgage-backed securities, whether that's through a relief or doing something they have to do something.
High level, the government's income is the GDP, which is basically just tax receipts, right? That's really all the money they bring in is taxes that we all pay, minus what they spend. And right now we're multi-trillion-dollar deficits a year. And there's like three categories that take up like 75% of that like total thing. It's like defense, Medicare and Medicaid, and I think the interest payment, I think is the last one. So I guess the easiest lever to pull is the interest payment part, right? Because you're not going to cut people's like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Defense is not going to happen. So like that's, I guess, the avenue like that they would go towards the first and quickest.
Yeah, they would have to, right? And I think that's also plays kind of into what is the best way to get the economy started. And real estate is kind of the driving factor of that. Like, how do you get construction jobs going? How do you get real estate moving? When you see these new bills coming in, depending on when the presidents come in, a lot of times it's infrastructure bills.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's because they want to get construction jobs going. And if you can build infrastructure for people to build homes and businesses, like it makes sense. Right. But like, I think the opposite is happening just right now with the whole Doge concept is they're trying to reduce government spending. So I don't know that Trump is going to be considered a infrastructure guy. Right. That it just doesn't seem, maybe he has some, I don't know his whole budget plan.
This is very hard to do that from a top down level, right? We don't need international highways anymore, right? Like, so like to do something like that, I think more has to be bottom up.
Well, you have to do it locally. You have to take federal funding and do something locally. They've done that through like the power grid enhancements, and the Biden administration tried to do that through internet, but they could never get internet anywhere. So that was a big flop, right? Because the idea being if you can get high-speed internet to rural areas, that will allow people to, grow businesses there.
Yeah, now it's just Starlink.
Yeah, now they just have Starlink. But
kind of tied to that though, there was do you guys know who Tommy Har is? I'll name drop him. He's a decent sized operator in the Columbus market. Competes with our friends Josh and Tiffany. But he dropped actually a good video the other day of like how many people get paid during the real estate transaction. And they tallied up. It was like 40 people, from insurance to agents to contractors to title people, the whole 9 yards. And that's why real estate is such a big part of the economy, is how many different sectors go through one transaction, which can be frustrating if you're relying on other people in this business. But it's why it's such a big driver of the US.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah. I mean, this whole situation with FHA is tough though too, because I don't even know if there's an opportunity here for investors, right? Because it's not like you can buy these properties subject to, right? They're all underwater unless you're one of those dorks that's happy buying one with no equity.
Yeah.
They're all super high leverage, right? So say the house is worth 300,000, their leverage on it's probably 275.
I mean, anecdotally, I track the foreclosures and even my stupid PPL leads that are coming in. So many of them. Well, one, foreclosures are going up and they're all 2021 or newer loans that were issued. And two, the PPL ones are the same thing. Like, hey, I'm looking to probably sell this. It's too much house or whatever.
That sucks, bro.
Yeah, it's not much you can do. Like, you can try sub 2 if they have a good rate, but then they still don't really cash flow that well. And is that worth it? Maybe not.
No. And the thing is, they can't accept your cash offer. They also can't sell it on the market because they don't have 7% equity with the way the market's turned over to cover the cost of sales.
Oh, no, here's a good one. Talked to a seller. They bought a new build in 2022. And they basically were never told or never calculated that when the house is built, the property taxes are going to go from land value to the real estate value.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That's my whole neighborhood, dude.
Bro, their taxes went up like $600 a month. And so they're like, I can no longer afford to live here. I was like, okay, one, you should have known that, right? Like, sorry, that kind of sucks. But I wonder how many people that's happening to. I guess.
A lot. So I live in a neighborhood where the average home price is $700,000 to $900,000. Okay, higher end for Spokane. And literally all these people bought their house in the same time. They're all new builds. And when they were getting approved for loans, it was 2021, super low interest rates, debt to income was whatever. People were stretching their budgets to live in this neighborhood. It's in like the best school district.
It's near Mike DeHaan.
It's near me, right? They heard that I was here and everyone came flocking. But we got our property, like our first property assessments 2 years ago. And on my house, property increased $700 a month, property taxes did. Everyone else is getting similar stuff. Literally half the neighborhood sold, turned over for losses. Like I've gone through and I've done the math. I'm like, they sold it for the same amount of money they bought it for. And they hired a 3% agent from Keller Williams. They lost their ass on that house.
Yeah. And that was a weird time. I mean, I remember when Mike bought his house, I mean, Mike freaking lucked out in a way because you bought your house while it was being built and the market hadn't taken off quite yet. And within the time your house was built, it freaking skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah, natural equity.
Oh, yeah, dude. I bought it for $750 and appraised for $880 when we closed.
Yeah, like 6 months later. You know, and it only went up from there. And so then people were buying after that, right? And so, yeah, they're definitely losing money. Yeah.
I guess, is that the responsibility of the lender or your agent, if you're even working with one, tell you that that's going to happen?
Your agent should your agent and your lender both should educate you on that. Like I've worked with both types that would and wouldn't.
But that's what we're talking about before. They only get paid if your transaction closes right now. What happens in 2 to 3 years? A, they can't predict it. B, they don't care because they're no longer involved with you. You know, if anything, they actually want you to have to sell because you're going to call the same agent and you're going to go to the same loan guy to get another loan or another deal that you make more money.
I'd be pissed.
Here's a good closing argument to tease maybe our next conversation and next episode is property taxes and should they or should they not exist? Because
we can talk about that.
I've thought about that, like how bad that is for like our elderly people and all that stuff. Like you're not basically in America, you do not have the freedom to own your own property. It's interesting.
Well, that is something that I would say places like California, I think have done well, where they have like the inheritance thing with taxes, where unless you sell the house, it doesn't increase the taxes.
They've done a good job with that. You're right.
You know, and so you have like these legacy homes that people have lived in for many generations that they're still paying taxes on from like the 60s or 70s.
They've gotten rid of that piece where you can't go from generation to generation anymore. But I think as long as you still own it, it stays the same. Like last year, I think they got rid of that.
I'm sure there's like people work around that with trusts and all that kind of stuff though too.
That's what they were all doing. They live in Malibu on the ocean for like $700 a year. The government definitely is. I don't know the rules, but we should pull that up for next episode. But just the idea of like, it's an interesting situation because as you age, like so, like say you have a fixed income, the only thing that goes up, like taxes go up. Like Social Security doesn't keep up enough, and they don't pay you enough. And if you're on a 401k, fixed income plus maybe a pension or something like that, those don't typically come with cost of living adjustments.
Yeah,
and so it's an interesting concept. And we've talked about how it's really killed cash flow in rental properties. It's an interesting thing. You've got to have it though. That tax revenue is very important for infrastructure, for schools, for all the stuff. But it's like, how else can you get it?
Yeah. Well, then cities do fuckery too. So like in my hometown of Bozeman, Montana, there's a lot of neighborhoods that are like really close to like kind of the Main Street area. When it used to be like a cattle town, that was like a valuable thing. You know, you could like walk to the shops and do whatever. Now it's where all the tourists want to hang out because there's bars and restaurants and everything else, right? So what they did is they went around to try and curb all the Airbnbs. They basically put a hospitality tax on all of these neighborhoods directly around Main Street. Here's the problem. There's also like thousands of people that fucking live there.
Yeah. Just like old people that have lived there forever. And
the old people that have lived there, since like the 60s.
Get pushed out of their house.
Yeah, and they're like, cool, now you have to pay $60,000 a year in hospitality tax for your house that you live in? That's ridiculous.
There has to be a better way to do that. Like, you can see if it's an owner-occupant or not. Like,
I know. But of course, they don't think that way. But yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation. That'll be good too, because next week we have Greg Helbeck coming to join us to be our 4th member for the show. If you guys don't know Greg, he has another show called Real Estate Step by Step, which I was a guest on a little while back. He's a real estate veteran and a super fun guy. I got to hang out with him in Park City a couple weeks ago, and he will match our vibe very well. He lives in Seattle, but he's got a strong New York accent, New York personality.
Beautiful. I'm sure that fits in well there.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, right.
He's a good follow on Instagram for the audience.
He is, yeah. So shoot him a follow, Greg Helbeck, and he'll be joining us next week on the show. Besides that, guys, we appreciate you all listening. Please share the show with any of your friends that are into real estate business or anything else. You can also shoot us a follow on Instagram. I'm at Mike_invest. Dan is at InvestorMan. Dan. Dylan is at Dylan_Doug_deals. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you want more from us, you can shoot us a follow on Instagram. I am at Mike_invest. Dan is at InvestorMan Dan. And Dylan is at Dylan_does_deals. Shoot us a follow and send us a DM to let us know what you think of the show.